Hello, my name is Tosca Bruno van Vijfwijken. I co-direct the Transnational NGO Initiative. And today we're undertaking a fun, brief interview with Srdja Popovic. He's the Executive Director of the Center for Applied Nonviolent Action and Strategies, or CANVAS, and based in Serbia, but we're going to talk about your mission in a moment. So thanks for allowing us to interview you today. So tell us a little bit first about the nature and mission of CANVAS.
CANVAS is a small non-profit organization based in Serbia. It was basically developed by two guys who founded Serbian resistance movement back there in the 90s, Slobodan Đinović and myself. Our mission is to educate activists, and the shortest way to explain our mission is to make the knowledge about how the successful nonviolent movement function user-friendly. So we are researching into the principles of successful nonviolent struggle. We are looking at the successful movement, failed movements, but before all, we train an activists coming from different countries. We work with people from 46 different countries, and we constantly learn. $1 million question, what it takes to have a successful nonviolent movement and change your society. This is our mission.
I see. So I hear you say that you're both doing, obviously, the education, the training of nonviolent strategies and tactics, but also you seem to do research in that area because you're studying other movements. Tell me a little bit across those different movements, including the one that you were so involved in yourself in Serbia, what you learned. During the talk today, you talked about unity, planning, and discipline. Did I get it right?
Oh, you get it right. From the military point of view, it's unity, planning, discipline. From a nonviolent point of view, it's unity, planning, and nonviolent discipline. But first thing we learn is that actually we are looking at this as a form of warfare. So whether we are talking at this as a form of warfare for political power or for social space or political space, and we are very much into trying to understand what are the principles of successful nonviolent struggle. So as you mentioned, we can look at the successful movements, and we can say that they all share this tree. We call it the holy trinity of success in nonviolent struggle. It's unity, whether it is a unity of purpose, political unity, unity within the organization. Then the planning. You will never have a successful nonviolent movement if you don't have a strategy, and under strategy a campaign. And then the tactics. The media are overwhelmed with pictures of tactics because we know a lot about the protests and boycotts and sit-ins, occupy this, occupy that, but basically these are the tactics. What we need to really look at is what's the strategy behind the tactics. What are you standing for? What is the vision of tomorrow for the movement? Last but not of least importance, movement have nonviolent discipline, and this is very important, not only because the nonviolent struggle is so much successful than the violent struggle. Actually, the recent study by civil resistance work put the nonviolent struggle to the 53% success rate compared to the 26% success rate looking at the 323 different violent and nonviolent campaigns in the last century, but also because it's a high moral ground. And at the end of the day, the reason why nonviolent discipline is so important, that one single act of violence can overtake all the media attention and can label your movement the way you don't want to be labeled.
Yeah. I just wanted you to go a little deeper into two things that were really striking from the talk today for those of us who weren't able to attend that. One was the role of humor and laughter, which was really interesting. And the other, you did make some brief remarks in response to questions about this whole difficult distinction between creating revolution, whatever that means in a certain country context, and then the longer term democratic transition, and that the two, obviously, as we know also from recent examples, one doesn't necessarily lead to the other.
I think it is very important to understand that we're looking at the three-stage process and the real change in a country. And I'm not only talking about replacing non-democratic regime with democratic regime.
Okay.
I'm talking about the gay rights movement. I'm talking about the anti-colonial movement. I'm talking about the environmental movement.
Okay.
So there are three phases of this process. The first one, you are removing the obstacle. If the obstacle is a bad government, corrupted government, socially unjust government, or just a non-democratic government, it is one thing. And we tend to learn a lot about this. We know how this movement functions, we know how they mobilize people, we know how they build from the small victories. And then the second step is preventing this victory to be overtaken by the others.
Right.
Often it's military. When you have millions of the people in the street, very often the military says, oh, we need to come in and fix the things down. 26 years after that, you still have the same military people who were fixing things down in the last century. Last but not of least importance, building a democracy, building the new society, building the socially just society, building the institutions is the only thing which will make this change durable.
But does Canvas focus on the third stage, if you will? Not so much, am I right?
No, we focus on the first stage because we think the seeds of change are seeded in the first stage. So if you don't have the vision and the strategy how to push the overall campaign, and if you end your strategy with just bringing the bad guy down, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. And I think this world is full of the organizations who are dealing with building of democratic institutions, capacity building, international NGOs. We don't want to compete with them. They are big competitors, they are serious, we are very small, 5-people organization, and our expertise is how to bring about the nonviolent change. But still, I think that the rules of successful transition are seeded in the first part of struggle, because, I'm living in a transitional society. Serbia went through the 5 wars, terrible dictatorship. For the 90s, we were capable to oust the guy called Slobodan Milošević from power. The reason why we have successful transition, not only the successful revolution, is because very early in the process, we knew what we want. We wanted a set of freedoms, free and fair elections, free media. We wanted to stop war with our neighbors, and we wanted to go into EU. The reason why Serbia is here now, on the way to the EU, and in the country where we had like 6 electoral processes in a row with free and fair elections, is because we knew what we want. The bottom line is, you want to change your society, you need completely to know what you want very early in process, as opposed to knowing what you don't want and struggling only against things you don't want.
Right. There are many things that one could follow up, but I'm going to have to shift a little bit and ask about how you personally first became involved in what we sometimes here at Maxwell call transnational activism. So what was your motivation to start a struggle in Serbia that led to Otpor and led to the revolution?
Well, basically rock and roll.
I see.
The fact that we are coming from a very cool urban culture, and this culture was very, very unlikely prey for Milošević. I'm coming from a generation which was very important for a change in Serbia. Many young Serbs at that point, born between, let's say, 1968 and maybe 1980. They were old enough to remember good old Tito's times. They were witnessing the downfall of Yugoslavia, and they were in their 16s, 17s, and 80s, right in time to be conscripted for Milošević's stupid wars. So the turnout, very unlike the popular belief brought by the Western media that this country is full of nationalistic nuts. The turnout to Milošević mobilization was about 10% in my hometown, Belgrade. And the urban population was really against these stupid ideas. The trick was how to organize this movement, and then when you look at this generation, it was a generation starting students' protests 1982, running students' protests 1996, 1997, and then, forming Otpor in 1998, winning in 2000. That's the Serbian story. Transnational activism, it's yet another story. It brings us to 2003. There is this fantastic movie called Bringing Down the Dictator, which has been translated into 16 different languages. And because many activists around the globe have seen it, they get this idea that Serbs made a cool revolution. Let's try to do something like this in Lesotho or wherever. So the first invitations we were getting, these were in 2003, basically coming from places like Zimbabwe, Belarus, Georgia, Ukraine. That was also an important point in my life. After Revolution 2000, I went into the Serbian National Assembly. I served the brilliant man, the one man in a generation called Zoran Đinđić, who was first democratically elected prime minister in Serbia. 2003, he was unfortunately killed by the very unlikely coalition of mobster guides and former secret police. And that put me in a very strange position. I wasn't born to be a politician. I'm basically a biologist by my passion. And revolution was more passion, and politics was more passion than the really, I'm not a guy with a tie sitting in the parliament pressing the buttons. This is not how I see myself. 2003, my 2 biggest challenges in politics were gone. Milošević was already delivered to Hague, and Đinđić was assassinated. On the other hand, there was the whole new world of the people who thought that we may help. This is where we started. We developed the curriculum. We started writing the books. We started traveling on a crazy schedule, 100,000 miles a year. 10 years after that, here we are. talking to you on this lovely
Interesting
place.
set of
And so the even prominent university like yours are interested in the issue, which means that at least we're making some point.
So you've already talked about some of the challenges that your organization is facing and the issues that it works on, but for lack of time, let me jump to a question about how does Canvas define effectiveness? How do you know when Canvas is effective and how do you assess that?
Well, it's a mix of nerve and experience and something measurable. I mean, when you see 25 people from country X on a workshop, it's very interesting. First of all, our audience. Activists always come to Canvas, we don't go to them. Whether they see the movie or whether they download one of our books, which are downloadable for free from our website, they learn about us and they want to talk with us. There are quite a good chances that these people who contact us from a country X, whether this is Burma or Yemen or whatever, are very likely group to start the movement. For some reason, activists of the kind are recognizing each other, like we have these small antennas on our head, and sometimes we recognize this buzz like the bees. So we have very good chances of getting the best people coming out from the Syrian conflict to reach us, really. And we are very lucky to work with these people. Then you can see and recognize the talented. Throughout the workshop, they do very practical things. And what we really assign them with is understanding the pillars of the society, doing the power graph exercise, settling down the communication strategy. So even sometimes through the workshop, you can see the talent and whether or not they come out with a solution. Later, you learn by reading newspapers. There was several shocks in my life. One of the biggest was buying newspapers on a Belgrade stand without an idea what the Egyptian activists were doing between meeting with us in 2009 and the day that the newspaper come. And there's this huge photo, like 1/3 of the page, of a scarred woman hanging waving the big flag with the fist, which was the symbol of the Serbian resistance, symbol of the April 6th movement, saying the fist shakes Egypt. So sometimes you see it in the media. And but I want to be clear here. We don't credit ourselves for this. We give people skills. It is 100% of their success. And I mean, don't ever think that the nonviolent revolutions can be exported or imported, because they can't. They rely on the numbers. And the only way to reach numbers is to mobilize people about their own vision, their own country. And very unlike popular beliefs on the far American left, which is, this is all CIA conspiracy. And then on places like Russia or Venezuela, which is like, this is the evil Serbs training the groups to oppose the good Putin, Chavez, whatsoever. Unfortunately, these revolutions can't be exported because they rely on numbers, and you just can't persuade million Serbs to go and demonstrate in Moscow or Tbilisi. They don't care for it. They care for their own country. So the only way to do it is through the indigenous popular uprising. So you never tell these people what to do. You just give them the tools so they develop their own strategy and their own tactics. This is what you do. And then never get into the trap of crediting yourself for this, because it is 100% the property of the people who make change in this country, not the foreign consultants.
I see. Last question. Thinking now about Canvas internally and the mission of Canvas, which is of course very external, but what leadership skills, both formal and informal, do you feel are crucial to you being an effective leader in Canvas? What does it mean to be a good leader in Canvas?
I mean, it's very easy to be a good leader in Canvas. We are a small team. We know each other for a million years. We love each other. We celebrate each other's birthday. It will be my 40th birthday in a few days, so the whole Canvas will be there. I brought all of my international trainers to my wedding a few years ago, so it's really a small family.
It's like
but
a family.
16 people.
Right.
And we also stay in touch with a lot of people we trained, and I'm proud to know and be in touch with people like Dalia Ziada in Egypt or K2 in Burma. And some of these people are tremendous intellectuals and real heroes, far more braver than I could ever be. Speaking about the leadership, we basically, when you look at these nonviolent movements, they're like two sides of this coin. One side of the coin is there is this popular misconception that somehow you need a leader, a charismatic person to run the movement. It's a mix. You had a lot of nonviolent struggles in which you really had leaders, like who were inspiring figures, spokespersons, setting down the strategies, and CEOs of the movements. Mention Lech Walesa, mention Mohandas Gandhi. And then you have more of symbolic way of leaders, Aung San Suu Kyi being house arrest very long, Nelson Mandela sitting in Robben Island, so they couldn't effectively lead the movement. And then you have the whole role of the successful nonviolent movements where there was something else, like the Chile, Czechoslovakia, Serbia. You really couldn't pinpoint a person and say this is the leader of the movement. But in any case, leadership is needed. So what is leadership? Is somebody needs to formulate strategy, somebody needs to come out with a vision. What is very important, you need to know people whom you expect to lead. You never lead from behind. You need to be next to your people on the street so they see that you are taking bigger risks than they are. You need to set the personal example because this is how it operates. You need to credit others for success and take responsibility for the failure. In short, leadership is needed, although the charismatic leaders can be both plus and minus for a nonviolent movement.
So you've immediately also given answers to what leadership looks like in social movements. Right. Well, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you so much for having me.